Hi everyone, welcome back to Lifting the Lamp. I'm Frater Eleftheria. So I'm making tonight's video about spiritual protection and, in fact, spiritual warfare. And there's a reason why I'm doing that. To put it quite simply, we are in the midst of a spiritual war. Whether we like it or not, we are under attack from demonic spirits in a collective way, or under their influence, depending on where we fall in this conflict, and being used as instruments of those spirits. And that has become very evident, particularly in the last week or so. And we need to be prepared. We need to have the tools available to be able to resist the onslaught of demonic attack if we find that it comes into our own life. I'm somebody who has come under a spiritual attack quite regularly from demons, so I've had to get very good at methods of protecting myself and actually driving them back, sending them back to, well, somewhere else in the world, but in some cases back to hell. When I talk about hell, I don't necessarily mean that there's like a place of eternal torment where people go in the afterlife, but there are certainly realms of darkness within the spiritual domain where what might be described in New Age terms as low vibrational entities reside. And human beings can be reborn into those realms as well, if you believe the Buddhists. Not forever, but just until they've paid their negative karma. But anyway, that's where the demonic dwells, and it can encroach into our own world, our own realm, and then that's when we see things like possession, obsession, vexation, and oppression by demons happening, different forms of demonic influence. Fortunately, there's quite a few ways in the Western esoteric tradition, as well as in broader religion, for fighting back against the demonic realm. And really, I've understood that we're in the midst of a spiritual war for a few years now. It's something that I think I first mentioned in my demon video, and it's only intensified since then. We really saw a point where that broke out again with the assassination of Charlie Kirk and the reactions of certain people to that event, which displayed a manifestation of the demonic world, as far as I'm concerned. Many of the people who celebrated that event were under the influence of the demonic. And where people have fallen on that event has really drawn a line in the sand in terms of like spiritual good and evil. And when I did my video last week, giving my 2 cents on the Charlie Kirk events, I wasn't sure what to expect, how many people might fall away as a result of me taking a very strict stance on that issue. And actually about 30 subscribers left the channel as a result of that, but 30,000 remained. So I'm very proud of all of you for sticking around. And if you've made it to this video and you're still subscribed, congratulations. You're in all likelihood not demonically possessed. However, if you are being harassed by the demonic world in some way, after tonight's video, you'll be very well equipped to be able to deal with it. So every culture in history has some idea about evil spirits in their spiritual or religious worldview, and all of them have some kind of ways of warding off or keeping out the evil spirits. So it's quite a universal thing. It's not just a Christian thing, like a Abrahamic black and white good versus evil thing. All cultures do it. It's more or less universal to the human experience, to be engaged in a struggle with these entities from time to time, and needing a certain skill set to deal with them. And what I'm going to be talking about tonight are the techniques that I'm familiar with from Western esotericism, and also from Catholicism actually, because, you know, you can say what you like about the Catholic Church, but one thing that they are exceedingly good at is exorcism and techniques for warding off evil spirits. And it's something that's very familiar to me as well, having grown up in that background. So those are going to be the techniques that I'm going to be covering tonight, which I've found quite effective in not only protecting myself, but taking the fight to the demonic. So I'm going to cover the techniques from the Western esoteric tradition first. In my opinion, these are not as powerful as some of the Catholic prayers and rites, but you know, they still have a place, and they can still be quite useful. So in the Western esoteric tradition, the biggest practices for warding off evil are the banishing rituals, most notably the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram and the lesser banishing ritual of the hexagram. And I've done videos on both of these in the past, giving a demonstration of both. The lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram is traditionally used for spirits that can be identified as elemental spirits. The banishing ritual of the hexagram is more to do with planetary level spirits that, you know, may be unwanted. So it's a bit more of a powerful banishing ritual in that respect. But they've both got a place. So these rituals are both very good for clearing a space before and after a ritual. They're generally good just for keeping mentally clear as well, getting rid of some of the excess energy that can be sort of moving around in our consciousness, which is a good way of protecting ourselves from having a weak spot for something else to come in and influence us. And also, it's just a good thing for keeping a space protected and keeping a space spiritually cleansed. When I've been with other people before and I've done a banishing ritual in a room, people have come into it afterwards and noted how clear it feels and how neutral the energy feels. You're getting all that excess energy out by doing a banishing, and you're also protecting the space. So in the past, when I've done a powerful banishing ritual, because, you know, there's been some kind of negative energy around someone's house or something, what has sometimes happened is that a perimeter forms around the house where odd things start to happen, like unruly behavior from random people walking past will happen, like at the perimeter of the metaphorical circle of where the sacred space ends. And it's almost like it provokes a reaction from the dark forces to have that protection there, or it creates some kind of a kickback or something where it kind of frustrates the dark forces or agitates them by having that ward there. So that's something as well that can be an indication that it's actually working. The source of the disorder, the source of the disruption will make it all the way to the boundary and then not be able to cross that boundary, which is a sure sign that you're dealing with something spiritual or spiritually motivated. And with these practices, I find that often doing them once is simply not enough. For really serious negative energy that's hanging around, it takes multiple repetitions of an LBRP and an LBRH together to really cleanse the space. The star ruby is another one that I've used in the past, which was quite powerful. It sounds really cool because you say it in ancient Greek. I don't really use that one anymore because I don't consider myself a Thelemite anymore, and it is a thelemic banishing. And you're also invoking beings like Therion and Babylon. And for me, the original meaning of those beings was something that was of the demonic, because it comes from the Book of Revelation. It's really difficult to kind of separate that when you've got such a strong association with something else. But for that reason, it doesn't really appeal to me anymore to use the star ruby for banishings. But another good banishing that I've found quite powerful is the conjuration of the four, which is something which comes down from Eliphas Levi. It's practiced by some Gnostics today. I don't have time to go into great detail on that tonight, but I perhaps will do a video where I give a demonstration of that banishing. Again, a very effective way of clearing a space. Another thing which Gnostics often use for spiritual protection is an amulet or a talisman known as the Holy Pentagram, which comes again from Eliphas Levi. This is the design of the Holy Pentagram, and it can be put at the front door of one's house in order to protect the space from encroachment from evil spirits. One thing that people often talk about when they're talking about cleansing a space or protecting themselves or expelling an evil presence from their lives is smudging. Smudging, using a smudge stick, it can kind of be effective, but there's an even more heavy-duty thing that you can do to fumigate a space in order to expel spiritual evil from that space. And that is to burn a little thing called Palo Santo. This is one of my absolute faves. It's a holy wood that grows in Peru and Venezuela from the Palo Santo tree. It's an aromatic wood, so it comes from the same family as frankincense and myrrh. And what you do is you light it on fire like this. It just burns very slowly, and then you just let it burn for a bit. Same principle as incense, and you just, when it's burnt for a bit, you can do that. And then it wafts and it smokes, and you use this to smoke the space out. It smells really good. So I've definitely got no demons attached to me because I love the smell of this stuff. So this is really good for clearing a space. It's very powerful stuff. So I would highly recommend Palo Santo if you're looking for ways of defending yourself against spiritual evil. And now I'll move on to some other forms of spiritual protection, or in fact, spiritual warfare. This is the Catholic material. People often associate, Catholic practices with just the Catholic Church and that's it. But there's been a lot of magical systems, magical traditions that incorporate things like the saints or even Christian psalms into the magic that they're performing. So notwithstanding that things come from, an institution that has tried to crush magic in the past, they still serve as very powerful magical or spiritual techniques for fighting against the demonic in their own right. In fact, there's been nothing more powerful than the prayers that I'm going to share now. And I've tried other things like crystals and things like that for protection, but it doesn't cut it compared to a good old-fashioned prayer to Saint Michael. So the first powerful form of spiritual protection I'd like to tell you about from that tradition is what's around my wrist. This here is a Saint Benedict's medal. I don't know if you can see that, but that's what it looks like. And so this is something that I wear quite a bit. Not so much these days, but for a long time I wouldn't take it off because I needed a lot of protection. But demons absolutely hate this symbol. It's a very powerful form of spiritual protection. It protects us from spiritual evil and in particular curses. But more than that, it protects us against the evil of our own nature. So it can help to guard against temptation and things like that. And there's really two sides to the medal. One side has got all these letters and things. It's essentially a talisman, really, if you think about it. It's got a number of figures that represent acronyms and abbreviations for prayers. And on the flip side, there's an image of Saint Benedict. But let's analyze the imagery of all of the letters a bit more closely and reveal what prayer is really hidden within the symbolism of Saint Benedict's medal. There's a number of features on this medal. Most prominently, we see in the middle the letters CSPB, which is an acronym for the Latin phrase Crux Sancti Patris Benedicti, which translates to the cross of our Holy Father Benedict. And then we have the arms of the central cross and a few more acronyms, CSSML and NDSMD, which together stand for Crux Sacra Sit Mihi Lux, Nunquam Draco Sit Mihi Dux, which translates to, may the Holy Cross be my light, may the dragon never be my overlord. And then around the circumference, VRSNSMV on one side, and then SMQLIVB on the other. And this stands for Vade retro Satana, nunquam suade mihi vana, sunt malaquae libas, ipse venena bibas. Begone, Satan, never tempt me with your vanities. What you offer me is evil, drink the poison yourself. And above that at the top, the letters Pax, meaning peace. So the next prayer that I would like to mention is the prayer to Saint Michael. This is a very powerful prayer for fighting against spiritual evil. And there's quite an interesting story behind this prayer. So it was composed by Pope Leo XIII. He was conducting Mass one time in the 1880s. And when he concluded the Mass, he was struck with a vision. And in the vision he saw, or he heard the voice of Satan sort of bargaining with God, negotiating with God. And Satan was claiming that within 100 years, he could destroy the church. That's what he was vouching with God that he could do. And there was an indication from God that he was going to let the devil try. If you think you have the power to do so, let's see you do it. Your opinion might differ on how successful the devil was. It's over 100 years now and the church is still standing, but there are people who say that in the 60s there was a Luciferian takeover within the Vatican. I don't really know enough about any of that to comment further. So anyway, Pope Leo XIII had this vision. And then he was so disturbed by what he had witnessed that he composed the prayer to Saint Michael as a way of trying to fight back against the wickedness of the devil that he saw was going to intervene into modern history in a big way. So in a way, he kind of foresaw the spiritual battle to come. And it's interesting that we have another Pope Leo now, Pope Leo XIV, and it makes you wonder if he's taken that name because he recognizes that the period of spiritual warfare that his predecessor Leo XIII predicted has now come into manifestation. But that's a speculation on my part. So anyway, you have this prayer to Saint Michael, and this became quite an important prayer within the Catholic world, and it is one of the main prayers, if not the main prayer, that gets used in the Catholic exorcism rite. That's how powerful it is for expelling demons and pushing them back out of our lives. So I'd like to recite that prayer for you now. It's one that I know off by heart, which I say probably once every few days. And the prayer, it goes like this. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, thrust into hell Satan and all evil spirits who wander through the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. Extremely powerful prayer in my experience. In fact, I want to tell you a story about that. There was one time that I can think of in particular where I was catching a bus somewhere. This lady came onto the bus and I could see straight away that there was something off about her. There was something not quite right there. Like she was under the influence of something. I've spent a lot of time around the demonic through, messing around with magic, and I've learned how to identify it in people. So I knew that there was something up here. She sat quite a distance behind me towards the back of the bus, but I decided that I was going to recite the prayer to Saint Michael quietly to myself because I was just getting a really negative vibe from this person and what their intentions might be on that bus. So I began silently reciting this prayer. No way she could have heard me or seen me. But all of a sudden, as I was saying this prayer, she starts going, "Oh, Jesus, Jesus," in like this really mocking way, and then gets off the bus. So demons respond to this prayer, and it's a good way of ratting them out. So that's just one story. I've experienced demonic vexation before, where things go missing, and then the moment I start to recite this prayer, all of a sudden, boom, there it is, straight away. Not an issue finding it, because something doesn't want me to say the prayer. It backs off once the prayer comes into use. So those are just a couple of examples of how powerful this prayer can be. Another form of prayer that is a very powerful prayer in spiritual warfare against the demonic kingdom, praying for the intercession of Saint Joseph. And so one of the reasons why Saint Joseph is such a formidable saint is because he was, the guardian of the child Christ, and so he's seen as a protector of the Holy Family, a protector of the family generally. Because he is so closely associated with Christ, and because he's seen as this protector figure, he's quite often called upon for spiritual protection. And in fact, he's so powerful in matters of spiritual protection that one of Saint Joseph's titles is the terror of demons. Saint Joseph, terror of demons, cast your solemn gaze upon the devil and all his minions and protect us with your mighty staff. One thing that is also very repulsive to demons is the name of Christ or Jesus, also Mary. And if you think that there's something demonic nesting inside of you and you want to get rid of it, a really good way of doing that is by saying the Hail Mary. The Our Father also works very well. And if you're not Christian or Catholic, then other names of God, such as Iao, the Greek name of God, is a powerful word for clearing a space and sending unwanted negative energies packing. And that's been effective in the past as well. Not so much for more assertive forms of spiritual warfare, but certainly in terms of clearing a space of any residual negativity. But there's lots of things that we can have on hand to deal with spiritual evil when we encounter it in our lives. And it's not to say that every bit of bad luck is because of that, but it's got a certain intensity to it where you can kind of tell the difference after a while. And let me as well give a disclaimer that the knowledge in this video is not for you to go out and start reciting prayers to Saint Michael at other people. This is all just for your own personal spiritual development and your own spiritual self-defense to get your own life in order, to remove the influence of the demonic from your own life. And take the fight to demons, not to other people. So that is the purpose of this video. But I think that it's much needed. I've had people several times in the past asking me about spiritual protection, about dealing with the negative entities, and I've put it off probably for longer than I needed to. And also because the methods that I do know are very Catholic, and that can trigger certain people. But if it was a Buddhist or even like a Muslim prayer or something, there'd be no issues there. So that's just people's own hang-ups, I think, manifesting themselves. But I decided that it was time. It was time to do this video because after the events of the last week or the last few weeks, it's on. So far as the demonic world is concerned, it's absolutely on. It was on before, but now it's really on. Now, you've got the tools for fighting Satan's kingdom. Best of luck to you. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe to this channel to support my work. And if you want to support me further, you can hit join or thanks down below. Oh, and please hit the notification bell when you subscribe, because YouTube doesn't always notify people of my new videos. So please go do that as well. But thank you again for listening, and I'll see you next time.